Welcome to Norse Code, the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from the Wide Left Substack. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, I suppose we have to record after that Bo Nix interception.
Yeah, so because you'll see in a moment, we had to budget a little bit more time for this episode. I asked, like, hey, when should we start? Like right after James sent the show note links or the link to the recording, and he was like, yeah, after Bo Nix throws a pick on this next possession. And dear listener, it took not but 4 minutes.
I howled. My fiance looked over at me and was curious if I was having a stroke as I kept trying to get to my phone. I was wondering
why it took you a second to respond to that, because I was like, good Lord, dude, you see this happening?
Yep, that's where we're at tonight. It was a Thursday night football between a terrible team with a quarterback who was falling apart and an incredible defense and special teams and a terrible quarterback who was falling apart.
with an awful defense and special teams, but somehow.
Yeah, this was not good football. Daniel Carlson, I am glad I dropped you in all of my hell leagues except maybe one. I was like, why am I in 10th and 11th place in all of these leagues? This sucks. I need to reevaluate my kicking situation. First off, let's get rid of Daniel Carlson. Success. And with that, welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are all doing well. We have a game to preview. We're going to preview the Ravens game here in just a moment. And then we've got the mailbag as well. But before we start, once again, thank you so much for listening to Norse Code. If you enjoy the show and would like to help us out financially, there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can go over to patreon.com/norsecode. For $3.50 a month or a little less for the year subscription, you get access to the Discord, bonus episodes. I'm putting one out this weekend, I think. I think it's time to get it out now that we have a couple of topics, including discussion on the Matt Khalil news. Don't Google it. It's not worth Googling. Save it for Patreon, patreon.com/norsecode, and listen to the bonus episode there. Special thank you to Andy Deutsch for signing up over on Patreon. You can also go to paypal.me/norsecode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com for any number of wonderful pieces. I think that's the second time in a week I've messed that up. Any number of wonderful pieces of Norse Code merchandise, whether it's t-shirts, baby onesies, a awesome skateboard that Arif is going to eventually get from the store, mainly because I'm just going to send it to him for fun. Yeah. Let him be confused by it. It'll be great.
Great.
A nice skate deck. Check it out. norsecode.threadless.com. All right, let's get into the episode itself. And we're actually going to do this Ravens review the old-fashioned way. With me asking questions and Arif being frustrated and answering them anyway. We're doing it live, as in the way we do it at live shows. So my first question about the Ravens isn't going to be in the most obvious direction, because when you think of the Ravens, you think of their amazing offense, or you think of Lamar Jackson. This year, I'm thinking about the Ravens defense because it's truly been awful. This is probably the reason why they are the record they are, quite frankly, and why they are in danger of missing the playoffs. What went wrong, and did it have everything to do with trading for Jair Alexander?
Well, not that they've traded him away. No worries there.
Yeah, this is now they're on a Super Bowl run.
Yeah. I mean, part of the reason the record is what it is because they played Cooper Rush in 2 of their games too. But the Ravens defense had been struggling. So this is a really important distinction. Over the past 3 weeks, it has been or 4 weeks, I guess, but 3 games because they had a bye. It has been a pretty outstanding defense. And that marker is important because that is when they traded for former Charger safety Alohi Gilman, who was a teammate of their all-star safety Kyle Hamilton at Notre Dame in college. the reason for why this is significant, I'll explain in a bit, but just to kind of get you an understanding of like how the Ravens performed before and after that trade, which, I mean, we're working with small samples here, and we should acknowledge that 2 of those offenses out of the 3 that they played at that point in the schedule are pretty bad, right? So I want to say, what was it, like the Bears? Well, I'll just pull up the schedule right now. But they had the Bears and the Dolphins. Those are pretty bad offenses. But they also had the Rams, and they held the Rams to 17 points, despite having Cooper Rush at quarterback, which means probably their field position on defense was pretty abysmal to work with. And right now, like, Matthew Stafford is in the middle of pushing for an MVP, award, right? Like, he's in the race for consideration. So it is significant that they only allowed 17 points to that team. But in the first 5 weeks, so before the Gilman trade, they were 30th in the NFL in EPA per play. So that's minus 0.16 in EPA per play. They were 32nd in rush EPA per carry and 29th in pass EPA per dropback, 28th overall in success rate. So this wasn't just like an explosive play thing. They, from down to down to down, were pretty poor. And were dead last in the NFL in points allowed per drive. So I think they were second or third in points per game over those three games or 4 weeks. But that's a somewhat more difficult stat to use because the Ravens have fewer drives than a bunch of other teams because they run the ball so often. So the clock gets the clock drains a lot more, and so you have fewer drives, which is fine because per drive is a more useful metric anyway. But actually, I'm taking they're 29th in total drives. Part of that's because they already had their bye week, but they have very few drives and they allow very few drives. So that's what happened in the first 5 weeks. Then they get Alohi Gilman, and the defense goes from 30th to 7th in the NFL at plus 0.1 EPA per play. And because I'm using True Media, they did reverse the EPA. So in a lot of places like RBs don't matter, negative is good on defense. Here they flipped it, so just keep that in mind. And on defense, they were 3rd in rush EPA per carry and 11th in pass EPA per dropback, 9th in success rate, and 3rd in points per drive. So they went from 3.22 points per drive allowed to 1.30 points per drive allowed. So that was a significant difference. So like, why did this safety that the Chargers kind of liked but didn't love, and enough to trade, well before the deadline, why did that matter? Well, it's because of Kyle Hamilton, actually. So he has played at or near the line of scrimmage. So he has only had like 3 to 5 snaps beyond 8 yards deep since Alohi Gilman arrived. Whereas he was playing a ton, like 60-70% of his snaps at the point of the snap anyway, aligned into the kind of the free safety area, the free safety range. And so he's been very close to the line of scrimmage. Sometimes he's played corner. A lot of times he's played like as a box safety or strong safety. He's lined up on the edge. He is lined up in the A gap. He has done all kinds of stuff. Very kind of middle career Harrison Smith stuff, right? So that was how they used him since the arrival of Alohi Gilman, who is pairing with rookie safety Malachi Starks at the high end, right? To be kind of either a single high or 2 high safety at the top. So the defense was pretty bad, but they've gotten a lot better. I don't think that like 3rd overall or even top 7-ish is sustainable, and I'll explain that in a second. But I just want to say that like the reason that the defense has kind of been reviving and why it seems like they've kind of, despite not having Lamar Jackson, at quarterback all the time, why they've had a string of wins recently is because that defense has improved. And so what that has allowed them to do in the way that they change their coverages is they don't necessarily change whether or not the middle of the field is closed or open all that often, but rather they've changed what the pre-snap alignment looks like. And so they've been able to disguise the coverages a little bit more at the snap, even though they're running a lot of the same coverages. There's like some discussion that Marlon Humphrey has kind of revived his level of play. He's caused a couple of turnovers, and that's important when we're looking at like EPA per play and stuff like that. I still think that there are some issues with his ability to catch up in terms of speed. But for the most part, it is their ability to allow Kyle Hamilton to play cover one robber, which is something he did a fair amount last year that he wasn't able to do while the safety situation was what it was. It allows him to play as a pass rusher. His pass rush snaps have gone slightly up since then. And it's interesting because it's like a very distinct difference from what happened in 2024, because in 2024, they moved him from playing kind of this nickel corner role to playing as a high safety. And that improved their defense in the second half. You remember they had like their own like defensive resurgence last year as well. This year, they have discouraged deeper passes a little bit more since this change, but the deeper passes have been more successful. So that's probably where the Vikings are going to get a lot of their success if they do get success on offense. But the thing is, that's just like a back end coverage change, right? Or not even a coverage change. It's just like an alignment change, right? Like there's still a team that runs basically every coverage except for like cover 4 at a relatively league average rate, and cover 4 they just don't do that much. But they do like a decent amount of cover 1. They do a bunch of cover 2. They've done a little bit of cover 6. That's just a back end coverage change. The front end of the defense has been really bad. They did trade for Draymond Jones in order to kind of recover this, but we could just go over kind of some of the unit level performances in pass rush, and then also some of the individual performances. So at a unit level, the pressure rate that they've been able to produce is one of the worst in the NFL. 30th in pressure rate and 30th in sack rate. So they pressure opposing quarterbacks per true media anyway at a 26.3% clip. And they sack quarterbacks at a 3.7% clip. That is brutally bad, and it doesn't change dramatically from this split on the back end. And part of that is because of injury. So Tavius Robinson, a fourth round pick from 2023, he broke his foot. But so he was there for the first 5 games. I don't know how much that really matters, because their most prolific pass rushers, not that they've traded Odafe Owe to the Chargers in the Elohi Gilman trade, were Kyle Van Noy, Tavius Robinson, and Mike Green. And out of the 77 pass rushers who qualified to have enough snaps, Kyle Van Noy had the best pressure rate out of those 3 at 8.3%, or 61st of those 77. And so Tavius Robinson and Mike Green, the rookie first-round pick, ranked 73rd and 74th out of 77 edge rushers in pressure rate. So their edge rush unit is brutally bad. And that is not helped by the fact that the interior defensive line has gotten injured. So Nnamdi Madubuike, who averaged 8 sacks a season over the prior 3 seasons, and had a 10.5% pressure rate over those seasons, including 13.5% in 2023, where he had 13 sacks that year. He was injured in the second game of the season. And currently leads the Ravens in sacks with 2. He's tied with one other player, Tavius Robinson, who has not played for a month. They also lost Broderick Washington to injury. That hasn't helped. And they haven't blitzed much either in response to that. They rank like 14th in blitz rate. So they haven't, been like stodgy and only been rushing 4. They do it at about a league average rate, but they haven't blitzed more in response to this problem. But they did trade for Draymond Jones, who, with the Broncos, I think he originally was with. He was a defensive tackle, and then he would join the Seahawks, and he increased his edge rush rate, and then he was with the Titans, where he's been an edge rusher essentially. And so he's probably going to be an edge rusher with some inside potential for the Ravens. We don't know yet. He hasn't played yet. But you could take a look at his alignment over the past 5 years to kind of see how often he's played on the edge. Well, in 2021, he only played 9% of his snaps on the edge. The rest were as a defensive tackle. That's pretty normal for a reasonably athletic defensive tackle. Then in 2022, 29% of his snaps were on the edge. And then in 2023, 45% of his snaps were on the edge. Last year, it was 86%. And this year so far, it's 96% of his snaps on the edge. I haven't actually seen that before. That's pretty remarkable, right? Like Michael Bennett didn't really have that movement from like defensive tackle to edge where he played edge the whole time, or vice versa, right? His pressure rate has gone up every year that he's done that, except this year. It is at just an 8% pressure rate. But last year's at 12%. The problem is that 12% would be about 40th out of 77. So that's not remarkable. And that's where Odafe Owe is at 12%. And that's the guy they traded. They traded the edge rusher that was getting the most pressure. Now, it's kind of like a Jonathan Grenard situation where he's getting pressure but not getting sacks. But he has gotten sacks since he's arrived in Los Angeles. So I guess that those sacks were just going to come anyway. But yeah, that pass rush group is probably the primary reason that they have not been able to really put the screws to opposing offenses. The back end coverage, obviously that's like playing a role, and that has gotten a lot better. And like I said, the success rate has improved. So it's not entirely like turnover dependent, but I do think turnovers are kind of helping them on that one. Having Nate Wiggins there, having Marlon Humphrey there, playing, a little bit more 3 safety, instead of having like TJ Tampa out there or Chidobe Awuzie, has kind of helped a little bit, but I just don't know that that's going to hold up against like a Jordan Addison type, right? They haven't been remarkable on deep passes. They were average for the season, but since week 6, they ranked 22nd. So I wonder if there's probably going to be an advantage to be had there, because I don't think any of these guys have the speed to keep up with him, except for maybe Awuzie, but I think he's a little bit too old for that. And I think Justin Jefferson is gonna have a field day getting open. The question is whether or not JJ McCarthy has the ability to get him the ball. And given that the Ravens seem to allow quarterbacks a little bit more time in the pocket, this might be kind of a good matchup where you've got a quarterback that holds on to the ball a little bit long, but loves explosive plays, with an offensive coordinator that loves explosive plays. Currently, I believe he leads the league in depth of target, or if he's not first, he's second, right? Like he's throwing deep. And I think that this is the kind of defense that will allow you to do that. It's going to be very difficult to run on them. I already told you about the change in how good they've been at stopping the run. So from 32nd to 3rd, some of that again, I think is just kind of who they've played against, right? Like I think, given that, I think what was it? Monangai was the running back for the Bears. The Miami Dolphins suddenly have like lost the ability to play football. I don't know, like if maybe that plays a role, right? But like not going up against like James Cook and Jahmyr Gibbs. And I guess the Browns didn't have Quinshon Judkins then, but like not having those running backs and those running attacks, instead having this weird broken Miami one and an injured Bears one, maybe that plays a role. But still, they're 3rd now in run stop rate. So the Vikings don't really rely that much on the run. They probably should run the ball a bit more, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be a huge concern. I still think that their linebackers, both the rookie Teddy Buchanan and the starting middle linebacker Roquan Smith, the veteran, both very good at stopping the run and are pretty decent at preventing throws over the middle. So I would say that the Vikings are probably going to focus on explosives. I don't know if that's going to necessarily come from play action. I don't know that it needs to come from play action. And the Vikings, again, are not a significant play action team. They were against the Lions and they were against the Browns, but generally have not been a significant play action team. The Ravens don't show a particular weakness against play action or a particular strength against play action. So it kind of doesn't really matter. But yeah, I think that the matchup to kind of watch out for is figuring out what Kyle Hamilton will be doing from play to play. There's probably going to be a lot of bracketing where he and, maybe Nate Wiggins, for example, are probably going to be bracketing or doubling Justin Jefferson. If that's the case, and it's not Marlon Humphrey on Jefferson, you've got Marlon Humphrey on Jordan Addison, you should probably have some open shots that are available to you. But yeah, that's the Ravens defense is, I think, kind of a fascinating example of how one player who isn't even that good. I mean, he's fine. He's a really smart player. He's kind of always around the ball. He's just not the most athletic safety, which is suspect why the Chargers traded him. It might be like why like one player sometimes can have such a remarkable change in the way a defense runs. But I don't think the Ravens are truly as good as the 7th best defense, nor during that run were they as bad as the 30th best defense. I think they'll probably regress to something like 10th or 11th, which is not a bad spot to be in given how good the offense is.
It is kind of odd to watch, especially as how terrible they were the first few weeks of the season. The Bills game especially was just
Oh God,
you
that
could
was
just
disgusting to watch.
it was. I mean, it was awesome to watch the offenses go, but both defenses just had roller skates on the entire night.
Yeah, it was a Sunday night game for people who didn't watch it. Ended up 41-40.
Yeah, just kept going.
Yeah, but like the defenses were awful. It was fun. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Well, that's all they could really hope for. As far as the rest of the defense is concerned, as far as like the corners and everything else, what would be the best way for the Vikings to really attack this team?
I think playing those matchups, right? Like, so again, Marlon Humphrey is playing better than he did last year, right? That's like part of it, right? But I think paying attention to those matchups and seeing, if Marlon Humphrey is on Jordan Addison or Jalen Naylor, probably, feel comfortable trying to run deep on the guy, right? Kyle Hamilton is at the moment probably their only really good coverage player. Again, Cheeto is fine. Unless we're counting like a linebacker like Roquan Smith, who's very, very good in coverage. And that might cause some issues with like TJ Hawkinson kind of getting open and whatever. I love TJ Hawkinson. He's played a lot better in the past like 6 weeks. I don't think this is a game for him. I think instead, kind of getting a lot more speed against somebody like a Marlon Humphrey is probably your best bet. He has played better since this alignment change with Alohi Gilman. I kind of don't trust that is the whole, truth. I think what's really happened there is that he just hasn't played in the slot. He has played outside, and he's a better fit outside. But I think that he kind of relies a lot on being able to read the corner, being able to jam the corner. And I think if you've just set up, like if you figure out what the match coverages are when they do go into cover 3, and you can set up a situation where you've got Jordan Addison on him, do it. I think probably at some point you should, obviously feed Justin Jefferson and test what those brackets are doing. But for the most part, there's a lot of weaknesses here, like Nate Wiggins, like occasionally Malachi Starks, who started off the season really well, where you probably just want to pick on that. I think that for the most part, if you kind of run a lot of the deep shots that the Vikings just want to run, a lot of post routes, a lot of deeper square ins, I think that you're probably in a spot where the offense has the ability to produce. I think that with these outside corners who have had some issues in coverage, there's not really like a specific area of the field that's necessarily worth targeting. I would say, Wiggins does miss a lot of tackles. So if you are going to run a bunch of screen passes, go for it, especially if Wiggins and Gilman are on the same side of the field. Then you'll probably get a couple of extra yards just being able to dodge those tackles. But for the most part, I would say that there's not really a particular coverage that's a weakness for these cornerbacks, because the cornerbacks themselves are the weakness. It's really finding Kyle Hamilton and just kind of staying away from him, unless you've got like a need to have shot with Justin Jefferson or something like that. Like that I think is it. Jefferson should be getting 7 to 11 targets in a game. So I'm not saying that if you find out that Kyle Hamilton is on him every single play, that you just never target him. But I do think that this could be a game where somebody like a Jalen Naylor or a Jordan Addison just kind of go off.
So obviously the pass rush isn't something that the Ravens are really known for this year. Does that mean that we're less likely to be in a situation where JJ McCarthy is running for his life and throwing a ball 10 feet over the head of Justin Jefferson?
Less likely, for sure.
Not a guarantee that it won't happen.
Yeah. You hold on to the ball for like 3.5 seconds and like stuff's going to happen, right? Their top pass rushers so I already mentioned their top pass rushers by sacks were 2 guys who have not played in at least a month, if not 2 months. By pressures,
That's the Ngakoue situation we had.
Yeah, exactly. It's another Raven. Yeah, I was thinking about that the whole time. Yeah. They're pulling a double Ngakoue, right? Where the two sack leaders are not currently available. Their edge rush leader in pressures is Odafe Owe, who, as you know, is also not on the team. So it's Kyle Van Noy and Mike Green. And Van Noy is one of those kind of in the same, like Andrew Van Ginkel, kind of like you drop him off into coverage, you have him do a bunch of other stuff. He hasn't done that as much for the Ravens this year as he did when he was a member of the Patriots. I think he's had like 20 or something snaps in coverage. He's been primarily a pass rusher, unlike in previous years, but it's still something where you might want to see if he's like peeling off or something like that. But like Mike Green is just not getting a lot done. I think that his speed just isn't translating. There's that picture that went around during the preseason of him like demonstrating just outstanding bend and flexibility. And he has like a 6% pressure rate. It's not happening for him. And I think a lot of that is just like a strength problem. So I am generally concerned about the state of the Vikings interior offensive line. Travis Jones has been doing pretty well as a defensive tackle. And so, I mean, to me, he's more of like a run stuffer, but he's also leading the team of all positions. He's leading the team in pressures somehow. So if Blake Brandel is lined up against this nose tackle and he waits for like 3.5 seconds, Travis Jones does have some capacity to appear and ruin your day. But for the most part, this hopefully will be kind of a longer time in the pocket sort of situation.
Well, let's look at the offensive side of the ball for the Ravens. And obviously, Derrick Henry is a big part of this, and Lamar Jackson, now that he's back from injury, is looking to continue his success from last week.
Yeah. If we start with Lamar Jackson, he's obviously a very difficult quarterback to solve. There's a reason he was like the MVP last year. It turns out some teams just can't solve him. So the problem, of course, with Lamar Jackson is that he currently, I think he leads the league in passer rating by 20 passer rating points, which that's not a very good measure, obviously. But the idea that a measure, as flawed as it is, does correlate to wins, the idea that you can be ahead in that measure by this obscene amount is fascinating. He's like 5th or 6th or 4th in EPA per dropback just on passes, right? Just when passing the ball. And then, of course, he's the best rushing quarterback in the NFL. So that's a problem, right? A lot of it is happening intermediate. So if you take a look at his passing chart, the deep passes, which, I mean, there's a decent amount of them, but he's not throwing it deep a ton relative to what he's done in previous seasons and what we kind of expect of him and what's happening around the league. The deep passes are primarily along the sidelines. And by that, I just mean passes over 20 yards. But if you take a look at, and again, I mean, his deep throw rate is 14%, right? That's above average, but it's just not what it was in previous seasons. But if you look at where he's throwing the ball, it's along the sidelines. And so you might want to, I mean, the Vikings run a ton of cover 6. You might want to see if you can get away with a little bit of cover 3, just so you can kind of push these receivers to the sidelines and put more coverage defenders into the intermediate area of the field, because they love throwing intermediate, and that is not a sideline thing. They will throw over the middle, intermediate a ton. They'll throw to the sidelines, intermediate. The heat map is just this block from the 10 to 20 yard line of all these throws. And then you see kind of the extension to the heat map on the sidelines going deep, and a couple of shots short. So they've been a lot better on that intermediate, on those intermediate dropbacks, relative to their other potential throws, but especially compared to the rest of the league. So on screen passes, for example, so on throws behind the line of scrimmage, they're one of the best in the NFL. They're 4th out of 33 quarterbacks, or Lamar is 4th of 33 quarterbacks, first in success rate on screens, but that's still 0.02 EPA per dropback. That's really good, and it's not a ton, right? Screens are basically your answer to blitzes. Obviously, the Vikings will have to pay attention to it. This could be the best screen team in the NFL. So watch out. But again, screens are just not that high value, so it's not the thing to pay attention to with them, and they don't do it a ton. On short passes, 1 to 9 yards, they're sixth in the NFL, or Lamar is sixth in the NFL. 0.28 EPA per dropback. But that success rate is actually quite low. So I think what's happening on these short passes is that when they're successful, they're very successful. It's like an explosive play thing, like what DK Metcalf did against the Vikings. Well, that one might have been intermediate, but like a short pass that someone just takes to the house. That's usually how they win on short passes. They don't win them consistently, right? It's not like an effective short passing offense from down to down to down. You take a look at deep, right? 20 plus yards. They're 9th of 33 teams in the NFL, 11th in success rate. They get 0.67 EPA per dropback. That's a ton. 0.67 is incredible, but everybody throwing deep does well. That's why you throw deep. And they're only 9th, right, with that deep throwing system. You still got to watch out. 0.67 EPA per dropback over the course of a season is number 1 by a country mile. It's not close. Like, that's a really good deep throwing rate. But intermediate, 10 to 19 yards, they have 1.03 expected points added per dropback. I've never seen that in my life. Obviously, first of 33, they have a 72% success rate when throwing intermediate. And so that's kind of why I think the Vikings, who've been running a fair amount of cover 2, a lot more cover 6 this year than they have in the Brian Flores era, should at least consider some cover 3 or cover 1, where they've got a couple more guys over the middle of the field. Now, that's kind of against their DNA a little bit with the way that they blitz and the way that they have these zones to kind of take off to prevent offenses from taking the top off of the defense. I get it, but this is an offense that lives intermediate and has been carving teams apart. You take a look at what Zay Jones, or it's not Zay Jones, I always say Zay Jones, Zay Flowers has been doing. Not only is he 6th in the NFL in what fantasy points calls like separation score, which is fine. Like they grade every route by how much separation the receiver generated in the throwing window, essentially on like a PFF, like -2 to +2, and then they give you an average, and his separation score is 0.14, which is 6th best in the NFL, just behind like Puka Nakua, right? And right behind him on Ross St. Brown. Number 1 is Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? Like it's doing pretty well at identifying, even when you're not looking at routes where a receiver target is, doing pretty well at identifying that. He is winning on a bunch of intermediate out routes. So like 15% of his routes are these intermediate outs. But mostly he's doing damage on like in breaking routes or these dig routes where he's got an enormous separation score, an enormous win rate. That depth of target is about 14 yards typically. He's winning on some of these hitch routes. That's about 20% of his routes. His separation is fine there. And he's when he does go deep, it's like a post route, right? So it's going over the middle of the field. So you're not seeing as many go routes. You're not seeing as many corner routes out of Zay Flowers as you typically might, and so you're not getting as much reason to kind of pressure the safeties into winning the intermediate, the deep sideline. Sorry. So I think that cover 3 probably makes a lot of sense, but again, it's outside of the Vikings DNA, so they'd still want to use it sparingly because they haven't repped it a ton. The other side of that equation is how much should the Vikings blitz, right? And you've got this quarterback that is demonic against the blitz for all the reasons that you think and all the reasons that might not have immediately occurred. So Lamar Jackson in 2025, and I also looked up his 2024 stats. I can compare what it looks like over a larger sample as well as just the 5 games that he's played. Versus the blitz in the NFL this year, he is 0.53 EPA per dropback, which is first in the NFL. First out of every quarterback in EPA per dropback against the blitz. Against non-blitzes, he's 13th. So, and significantly smaller EPA per dropback. So in terms of how he compares to other quarterbacks and then kind of which is better for an opposing defense to see, it's 0.11 EPA per dropback at 13th in the NFL. That it seems like you shouldn't blitz, right? That's probably fair, but that's not how the Vikings live, right? How does he do against pressure? So in a clean pocket, it's almost like it's like a blitz, 0.58 EPA per dropback, first in the NFL. And I wanted to look at what that looked like going back on a larger sample. So I looked at Lamar Jackson 2024 to 2025, right? Versus pressure, he's 24th in 2025, but over the larger sample, he's 7th. It's still very negative, negative 0.37. In a clean pocket, he's still first, right? That makes sense. He was the MVP last year. In a clean pocket, he was first in EPA per dropback. Against the blitz, 2024 to 2025, first in EPA per dropback. So those all make sense. The non-blitz rate this year, where he ranks 13th, was first last year. So blitzing, not blitzing, kind of almost didn't matter, except on absolute terms, it was you're more likely to get scorched on a blitz. But the difference here is that Lamar performs very differently if the blitz produces pressure. So if you blitz, which the Vikings will do, they may not blitz at a 60% rate like they did against Jared Goff, but they might do it at a low rate for them, which is 35, which would be like fourth most in the league. You better get pressure. Because when he's pressured on the blitz, yeah, he's one of the best in the NFL when he's pressured on the blitz, but it's still negative. It's still negative 0.15 EPA per dropback. That's 9th of all quarterbacks this year. When you blitz him and don't get pressure, he does 0.69 EPA per dropback, which is nice. It's also 3rd. When you pressure him when just rushing 4, he's dead last, 33rd of 33 in the NFL. That wasn't quite the case when you expanded to the larger sample of 2024 plus 2025, where he ranked 16th of 34. But still, pressured on non-blitz plays is your best spot. And I don't know that the Vikings can necessarily do that or that they want to do that. I've mentioned before that very often quarterbacks who do well against the blitz or better against the blitz than the non-blitz tend to do worse against the blitz when it's the Vikings. And I don't know. So if you the Vikings might have to change up their blitz plan again. If you take a look at what they did against the Lions, which we've got that piece over on wideleft.football, if you take a look at how they got that pressure, they did a lot of what are called cross-dog blitzes. That's what the Matt Fry's piece is mostly about, where the linebackers line up in the A-gaps, then they cross paths as they rush the passer. Makes it really difficult to get good blocking angles. That can work when you're trying to stop the run, but it is much more difficult to do that. And what the Vikings did is they dropped off their edge rushers a lot. So Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Dallas Turner, one or both of them might actually drop off into coverage, and then you've got Jalen Redmond and Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen rushing the passer, right? And which is like fine, like that's just how the defense works. But you are probably losing a little bit of contain there. With Jared Goff, you don't have to worry about contain. He's just not that kind of guy. With Lamar, you absolutely do. And so I wonder if like you have the ability to deploy a blitz heavy plan that still respects the possibility of losing your rush lanes, or if maybe they'll ask the defensive tackles to be a little bit less aggressive, pushing up field so that there's less room for Lamar to run. I don't really know what the answer is there, but the Vikings will obviously have to maintain lane integrity in a way that they really just didn't have to care about with the Lions. And if they don't, they're going to get scorched, right? We've seen the Vikings get scorched by how many times have you seen a running quarterback highlight where the Vikings were the defense, right? I just feel like
God, I'm thinking of specific names at this point.
Yeah.
Michael Vick in particular.
Yeah, the Vick one is incredible, right? But we've seen Lamar do it against the Vikings before. We've seen Colin Kaepernick do it, not as much as he did against the Packers, but we've seen Colin Kaepernick do it. It sucks, right? And this could shape up to be that kind of game because of how often the Vikings want to blitz and how often they abandon lane integrity when they do it. Yeah, there was some question like, hey, has Lamar learned anything from like his 2021 game against the Miami Dolphins when Brian Flores was their head coach? And like they did very poorly. They scored like 10 points in that game. Lamar played very poorly. But I don't think that that's comparable. I think Lamar back then, not nearly the same quarterback as he is now. He's so much better against the blitz, and he has been over the past 2-3 years than he was against the blitz that season and in that game. So that's concerning. And then on top of that, one of the challenges that we brought up on the Viking Squad show is that sometimes, the response that some teams have put out against Lamar Jackson is to put speed on the field, right? There's the famous Chargers playoff game where this is primarily due to injury than strategy, but they had to put 7 defensive backs on the field a lot. That helped, quote unquote, contain Lamar Jackson, which it did. They won the game. It was great. And so some people would suggest that speed is the way to beat them. And at the time, like the running backs were, I don't remember, it was like Mark Ingram, right? Like Gus Edwards kind of guys. Not Derrick Henry. And so if you go smaller to go faster against the Ravens because you're so worried about what Lamar Jackson's capable of, you're going to get demolished. You're going to get beat up. Derrick Henry's going to run into your guys, and then you're going to run out of guys. It's not great. So that creates its own problem. Henry has been very weird this year compared to other years. The ball security obviously has been a huge problem, especially at the beginning of the season where he was like fumbling basically every game. And he's more feast or famine this year than he has been in the past. Like, we know that he's a big play runner. We know that, big play runners like him, like Adrian Peterson, will have games where they only have like 3 yards an attempt, 2 yards an attempt. And then they'll make up for it by getting like 70 yards on a run or something like that. And you can do that, but his success rate has been quite a bit lower this year. His ability to turn out 5-yard runs has been quite a bit lower, to the point where it can be detrimental to the offense. So he has like 3 100-yard games this year, right, out of the 8 that he's played. And he also has 4 50 or under yard games this year. He has been effectively bottled up on some occasions. Now, some of these he had low attempts. He had 4 yards a carry against Detroit, 5 yards a carry against Kansas City, but like he also had 2 yards a carry against Houston. He had 2 yards a carry against Cleveland. He had 3 against Chicago. That is the kind of up and down problematic running style that could put them behind the sticks if the Vikings are disciplined enough to maintain the run lanes, which I think ever since the return of Blake Cashman and Harrison Smith to full time, they've been a lot more capable of doing. But I am a little bit worried about like somebody like an Ivan Pace getting bowled over, right? I think that, or Eric Wilson, right? I think that it creates some problems. The Ravens have run mostly outside zone. They love getting to the outside, whereas in previous years they've been doing a lot more like inside zone or running to the inside. They've been running off tackle a lot. The yards per attempt on outside carries is a little bit higher than on inside carries, but if you only look at inside zone carries, it's like that's the highest. So there's still a capability of him to navigate zones, whether it is inside zone technique or outside zone technique, to generate a ton of really effective runs. But they just haven't been doing a ton of inside zone. A lot of it has been to the outside, and that's where they're most effective. And so I don't think, because outside zone puts a lot of athletic stress on your defensive linemen, I don't think the answer here is to, just like against Detroit, throw out 3 defensive tackles, because they'll get outsped. As much as I love Jalen Redmond and as much as Javon Hargrave can put in some really excellent games from time to time, and Jonathan Allen has been pretty stalwart, they're going to get outsped to the sideline by a truly bad offensive line. And Derrick Henry is going to, find his ability to get those gaps. So that's my concern there. I would say the Vikings' advantage on defense here is how bad that offensive line is. It is worse than the Vikings' offensive line has been this year. Like, obviously, if we take a look at the Vikings' offensive line now, we could say reasonably that it's better than the Ravens' offensive line. But what I'm saying is, you take all the performances that they've put together this year, and it is better than the performances that a mostly healthy, and we'll talk about Ronnie Stanley in a little bit, but a mostly healthy Ravens offensive line has put together. Like, that's a bad spot to be in, right? And if you take a look at PFF grade, the Vikings has been substantially higher this year. You take a look at Sports Info Solutions, they do total points added by blockers this year. The Vikings offensive line substantially higher than the Ravens SIS score. You take a look at ESPN pass block win rate. It is a little bit higher for the Vikings than it is for the Ravens, or it was. I think that changed recently. But the aggregate or composite score of all of that is that the Vikings have a better offensive line than the Ravens. Vikings offensive line performance has not been good. We all agree. The Ravens has been, generally speaking, a little bit worse. I think that I think that that's probably where the Vikings can get their advantages, and maybe they'll want to dial back on those blitzes a little bit because they can just kind of win one-on-one. And a lot of that is because of Ronnie Stanley going in and out of the lineup. We're familiar with like Christian Darrisaw not being available and then coming back and then having a pitch count. And while I don't think Ronnie Stanley is on a pitch count or anything like that, and we'll talk about the injury report in a second, he has had this persistent ankle injury from last year that has had him miss a couple of games. Like I think he missed, I want to say the Chargers game or something, or Rams game, sorry. But he has missed a bunch of snaps in games. So there's some games where he's played 16 out of 60 snaps. There's some games where he's played like 20 or 30 snaps or something like that. It's kind of similar. And the backup, Joseph Noteboom, is outstandingly bad. So Noteboom has 88 pass blocking snaps this year. And there have been 100? Let's take a look at the pass blocking snaps. He's had 88 pass blocking snaps this year. And let's get this right, out of 260. So he has 88 of the 260. He leads the team in pressures given up. He's bad. And so if Ronnie Stanley at some point misses time in this game, Noteboom is going to be there to help blow things up. It's not good. Roger Rosengarten, the rookie tackle, right tackle second year right tackle, has been a little bit up and down. Tyler Linderbaum, I want to say, leads all centers in pressures given up. That's a PFF score. And Andrew Voorhees, their guard, has been pretty bad. Daniel Faalele, the Minnesota guy, I wish he was better because he's a Minnesota guy. But good news for Vikings fans is he has not been very good. I think his PFF grade is higher than when I'm watching how it looks like he's playing to me. But it kind of doesn't matter. Okay, I just looked it up. Linderbaum does not lead centers in pressures given up. That's the backup center that the Chargers are playing, and I believe backup center that the Buccaneers are playing. Those two have the most, but Linderbaum is not playing well. So that's kind of where a lot of this comes from. Obviously, Lamar Jackson holds on to the ball a ton, 3.5 seconds, and he's earned that ability, kind of, I think, unlike JJ McCarthy. But that is not the reason the pressure is arriving. I think he's exacerbating it, but mostly it's this offensive line having a lot of problems. So that's kind of where the Vikings probably have some advantages. Also worth noting, Ravens fans believe they have the best tight end room in the league. I think they've got a pretty decent argument. I think they're maybe overrating Mark Andrews, who has not looked the same since his multiple injuries. But
I was actually just about to ask how. Well, first off, just correcting that Josh Allen was MVP last year, but 2023 was
oh yeah, sorry. Lamar Jackson should have been MVP last year. That's Josh Allen should have been MVP in 2023. Lamar won it, and then it got reversed in 2024. Lamar should have won it, and Josh won it. Who cares? Yeah. Fair.
But I was going to ask how Mark Andrews becomes the best tight end in the entire league against us on Sunday.
Yeah. If Ivan Pace plays a lot, like a lot of fans have been suggesting that Ivan Pace should have a heavier role in this game because they want him to spy Lamar Jackson. And, there's a trade-off, right? If you spy, you're taking somebody out of coverage. If you're taking somebody out of coverage, where are you going to kind of fill in that hole? Does it happen over the intermediate? In which case you've got this problem that I just described. If not, are you getting rid of kind of a deep ball against somebody who's historically been very good throwing the deep ball? I don't know, but I am worried that you're not going to spy him every single play, right? We want to switch things up. If Ivan Pace is out there and he has to cover Mark Andrews is just a lot slower than he used to be, or Isaiah Likely, right? That's probably how that would happen. I trust Blake Cashman to cover either of them. But like Eric Wilson, who's primarily a coverage specialist, who has just been playing really well in all phases this year, but primarily coverage specialist, would probably do all right. But I'm worried about if they find a way to rotate a tight end onto Theo Jackson, or in some ways Josh Metellus. I think fans are more upset with him than I am. I think he's playing all right. But like, I'm not going to blame him for giving up a deep ball 4.5 seconds into a play to AJ Brown. But he's not the fastest safety. So Isaiah Likely probably. So I think it's like getting mixed up and ending up with the coverage where, somebody like an Isaiah Likely, which Charlie Kolar, I think, is the third tight end. Like, I understand why the Ravens fans think they have the best tight end group in the league. Like, now that the Vikings no longer have Johnny Munt, the best tight end 3 in the league, the Ravens might have access to that, right? I think having Isaiah Likely on Ivan Pace or Theo Jackson or possibly Josh Metellus could be pretty disastrous, and I could also see like losing a couple of reps. Eric Wilson maybe losing a couple of those reps too. So that's probably how that happens. It might also happen because the Vikings are rotating into a cover 2, and then one of these tight ends just finds like the seam there, right? So yeah, that is a concern. I'm very concerned about Zay Flowers. That is my primary concern. But that tight end group is like pretty good.
Well, what is there anything else that we should add before we wrap up with this preview?
Patrick Ricard is a 300-pound fullback. I just feel like the broadcast is going to announce that probably 4 or 5 times during the game. So prepare for that. And also, it is fun. Like, I get why they keep saying it. That rules. That's awesome. I believe he's like plus 4,500 to score a touchdown. That's probably just like not happening, but he's gonna hurt somebody. And we didn't mention 2 consecutive days where the Ravens have not had a player on the injury report. Now, obviously, they have injured players, right? They're all on injured reserve. Like I mentioned, Madubuike, the Broderick Washington, Tavius Robinson, like those guys are all on injured reserve. Ronnie Stanley is the one I wanted to pay attention to, and he is not on the injury report because no one is. And his persistent ankle issue has been part of the reason he hasn't been as effective as he often is. But also, like, mostly his problem is that he's missing, and Joseph Nopum has to play. It seems like that's not going to be an issue in this game. So that's worth bringing up, is that they've got a suspiciously clean injury report like 2 weeks after they got chided for listing Lamar Jackson as a full participant when he was a limited participant because he was only doing scout team.
Well, let's and it's funny you mentioned that. That's actually one of the mailbag questions here too. But yeah, let's go to the mailbag. First question is from HBO, who asks, what can Price do to properly shame the rest of the special teamers into resisting the urge to commit penalty after penalty? This really does need to become a bigger story, that the Viking special teams are almost guaranteed to get a penalty when receiving the kick.
Yeah. It happens like almost once a game because it happens once every 5 kicks. Goodness. Okay. One problem is that Miles Price's nickname is apparently Jug, because his head looks like a jug. Which, when I heard that, I did Google him because I kind of know what his face looks like, and I Googled him and I looked him up and I was like, okay, no, I get it, I see it, which I didn't expect to agree with, right? Like, I didn't expect to be like, oh, that looks like that's a face. Why would that? I get it. And I think that's why he doesn't command respect among the special teamers, because his head looks like a jug. So this might be an irreparable problem.
Well, the other question that HBO asked is being sane actually detrimental to quarterbacking? So a lot has been made of JJ McCarthy's post game locker room. Well, the look in his eyes, rather, that came during the locker room speech. It's worth asking the question: is being sane actually detrimental to quarterbacking?
Well, let's also combine it with the next question from Dees, which was for Reef's Identity Corner. Now that JJ has announced he has an alter ego called 9, what should our level of concern be from 1 to 10 on the, he's crazy / we're doomed scale? Or is this just further proof that becoming a parent makes you insane and kids are bad? We're not making this the parenting corner. But like obviously being a parent makes you insane. I don't think you disagree with that, James.
God, no. Kids are the worst.
Yeah. But I'm concerned because 9 sounds a lot like Mr. Unlimited, you know? Like
it's a little close to the whole Russell Wilson thing.
Yeah. Like when someone sent that to me, I was like, oh no, he's Russ. Oh no. We do have to remember that Russell Wilson like led the league in passer rating for like 3 consecutive years, right? He like was a very good quarterback, and in particular great in the fourth quarter for like quite some time before it all just kind of fell apart. So I guess what I'm going to say is that people are probably just going to tolerate it and or love it until he's bad or bad again. Like maybe he becomes good and then like 10 years later he's bad, which is a trade I think everyone would take. But like then it's going to bother the crap out of you forever. It's going to be so obnoxious you can't believe you put up with it. That would be the spot, but he has to obviously play well. Is being sane detrimental to quarterbacking? 100%. I can't think of a single great quarterback that's sane. The closest are like people who can put up reasonable facsimiles of being sane, like Peyton Manning, but like, no, like if you ever interact with people who have day-to-day dealings with quarterbacks and you just get some stories out of them, great quarterbacks are absolutely psychopathic. Good quarterbacks are also pretty nuts. Mm-hmm. It's not like, I don't know, like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, even when you get to the Phillip Rivers level, which I don't want to like, I think Phillip Rivers has enough talent to be considered a Hall of Fame quarterback. He just hasn't done enough for the resume to be there. So I consider him a Hall of Fame talent, right? All of them nuts. And you cannot convince me that a healthy person would spend as much time doing anything than a quarterback does in half a week, much less a full week. So yeah, being sane is crazy detrimental to quarterbacking. You like have opinions and desires and like goals and like favorite media. You like when you have a loved one, you want to spend time with them. Like those are sane things to do and not things quarterbacks do.
You know, that reminds me of something Ryan Leaf told me once.
Oh yeah, fair.
Speaking
of great quarterbacks,
you could go the crazy route too there. I just like that that's a sentence I can say in this particular instance and it actually applies. Yeah, well, let's go to our next question, which is from Leon, who asks, is it just a total coincidence that Baltimore's injury report is completely blank, mere weeks after getting fined for injury report shenanigans?
I think so, because I think their stuff is getting scrutinized, actually. Like, I think it's actually a coincidence. Like, I think they're less likely to repeat the same crime after having just been caught for it. Now, if it was like the Browns, I'd be like, oh, yeah, they totally would do it again. But like the Ravens are like a well-run organization. When they cheat, like they do it with passion and meaning, right? They cheat to win the game, right? They don't screw around with their cheating like the Browns do. So I genuinely think that they actually did have full participation in both of those practices, save for the people that are on injured reserve.
Next question is from LeVar Bolsharif, who asks, for Arif's Wentz EPA devotion corner.
What?
Coming from a place of love and respect.
No, that doesn't sound true.
Do you think the Vikings going a decade without drafting a first-round quarterback has affected your evaluation of young quarterbacks?
Okay, I did not like to be reminded that is how long ago Teddy was drafted.
Yeah, I don't like how time works.
Yeah, that's stupid. Someone should do something about that.
There ought to be a law.
There ought to be a law. I went to a Halloween party and they were playing like a bunch of 2008 pop punk because the person hosting the party was dressed up as a scene girl, and I was like, I don't like how much fun I'm having. This is bad.
Wait until they start playing your music. The ones that you like listen to in the car, in the grocery store.
No. That happened to me 7 years ago.
Yeah,
I noticed when that happened. Now, in fairness, I'm a 90s music guy, so it happened to me sooner than it did to my peers. It is happening to my peers. But but like when that happened, I was like, oh Christ. My music is inoffensive and appealing to a broad demographic now. This is rough. Anyway,
there is something about going through Hugo's, the grocery store in Grand Forks. There's something about going through Hugo's, listening to Shoop as I'm like getting chips. It ain't right, and I don't support it.
Yeah, when I watched, no, I'm going to keep going. Like you said, sorry because you detract, but now I'm going to continue the tangent. I watched React content, like React Brothers or whatever they call it. Don't do that, by the way. That sucks. And it pollutes your. I had to delete all of the videos from my watch list and then tell YouTube never to show me this channel again. But I watched the kids react to Blink 182, and they called it classic rock. And I just about had my soul leave my body. They're like, "Oh, this is classic rock." I was like, "Oh, F." It probably is. So yeah. Anyway, the drafting first round quarterback, like I think that would probably be true if I only covered the Vikings, but I spend a lot of time, doing the NFL side of Arif on NFL and watching like Drake May and Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix and Michael Penix or whoever from previous years, right? And I gotta say, JJ McCarthy is a little bit behind Drake May. I think that is fair to say. And I don't think I am judging young quarterbacks too harshly because I continuously try to look at the context in which a young quarterback has performed both against other young quarterbacks and within their situation. So when I'm talking about JJ McCarthy's EPA, I'm not just saying that he had the worst EPA in the league over the course of his first 2 games, right? I'm saying that his EPA per play compared to other quarterbacks in their first 2 games, going back 2 decades, was one of the worst we'd ever seen, and the worst for a first-round quarterback. Like, I am making sure I pay attention to context when I'm talking about comparisons to other young quarterbacks. That said, obviously McCarthy played better last week, right? And I talked about that in my Wide Left piece, and I talked about that in our game review, but I do think that he played a lot worse than it feels like he played because the Vikings, came out to a lead and then they didn't blow it and they won, especially with a clutch throw to Jalen Nailor at the end. But he should have had another pick that, I did end up watching JT O'Sullivan's quarterback breakdown on McCarthy. And he's like, obviously the young quarterbacks, he wants to but in the middle of that game, he ends up getting pretty harsh about McCarthy. And then he talks about stuff that McCarthy did really well that he likes. But there were some things that I didn't see that JT O'Sullivan pointed out, like a couple of wide open deep shots that should have been early in the progression that he missed. Like if there's like wide open deep shot that is not something that would typically be in the progression for that type of play, and a quarterback misses it, that happens to every quarterback. You don't want to judge a guy too harshly because you noticed an open guy. But when it happens kind of consistently and it is in that traditional progression for that play, it should be noted. So, I don't think it's just because I am looking at a team that has not drafted a lot of young quarterbacks. I think I do a fair amount to make sure that I'm looking at things within other contexts.
Let's go to Drunken Vike, who asks, if a hypothetical young quarterback could manage to be highly effective for 1 quarter a game, which quarter would be best to always be highly effective in? My gut says the first, but I'm sure there are arguments.
I think it's the fourth. And, I'm not a clutchness guy, obviously. Talked about this a lot. And I've talked about how our sequencing is wrong a lot of times. So a good example of this is I was watching football with somebody who had only watched like 2-3 other games before in their lives. And they were asking about like the coin flip, like, why would you defer? And I was like, oh, well, I don't think the math for this makes sense, but this is what coaches do. They want to make sure that they receive the kickoff in the second half. And they were like, why is that different than receiving it in the first half? And I was like, great question. Because if they manage to have the final possession, which is an if, right? Then they have the ability to stack up possessions. They can double dip or have 2 possessions in a row. And it's one of the only situations in football where that's the case. And having 2 possessions in a row should theoretically give you some kind of tempo swing. Of course, you have to give up a possession to do that. So I think the math of that doesn't work out. And so I think a lot of times we overemphasize sequence and timing. But the reason I'm saying the 4th is because I would rather my quarterback respond to as much information as possible than any other situation, because you don't necessarily want to score in 10 seconds, right? If your quarterback is guaranteed to be able to score when he wants to score, then I think the 4th quarter is the time to do it, because sometimes you want to extend the drive and have a 4-minute drill or have a drive last 8 minutes. Lord knows we've seen the Vikings defense give up 8-minute drives before and it'd be infuriating. If you can manage to figure out like, hey, we need this drive to be 13 seconds or we need this drive to be 8 minutes, that's only a decision you can have near the end of the game. Otherwise, you're just having a normal 3-4 minute drive that's a scoring drive. And I love having 4-minute scoring drives at the beginning of the game. Don't get me wrong. But I have to pick which quarter you're highly effective in. It's the 4th one because you're responding to as much information as possible. Now, that might also occur because, in the background of the situation where you get blown out, but we're not changing essentially the 2nd or 3rd quarters at all either way. If you're really good in the 4th quarter and you're playing against a team that if you were bad in the 4th quarter is going to blow you out of the game, that's still going to happen. And so your 4th quarter might be meaningless. But if it's not meaningless, I would like to have a quarterback to be able to respond to the situation contextually. So to me, the answer is the 4th quarter.
Next question is from Ben Greenhagen, who asks, as a Maryland-based Vikings fan, my quadrennial nightmare of Ravens versus Vikings nightmare returns this week. How do you cope with fandom 1 versus 2 in team battles? Perhaps noted Seahawks fan Arif can provide some insight.
Okay.
Also, can we give the purple team game an awesome nickname like the Periwinkle Cup? I'm actually just call. Isn't
Periwinkle a shade of blue?
Kind of. I'm going to trust Ben Greenhagen based on his education history because you doxed him and then told us all about his education.
I'm revoking his handsome title for calling me a Seahawks fan.
You
He's
can't.
No longer handsome.
Oh, that is. That is going to that may crush the man. I don't know.
I hope it does. Also, I call out Ben. You asked us 2 different questions on 2 different social media platforms. That was very weird. Yeah, I think it'd be fun to give that game a fun nickname. I don't know if I'd go with Periwinkle Cup. But like obviously like Violet Cup is stupid. You probably could. Amethyst Cup would rule, actually. I think that's great.
That's what it is. It's the Amethyst Cup. Go purple guys.
Yeah.
Let's go to Nick, who asks, what is your consensus line for Asante Samuel Jr.'s next landing spot? I'm thinking Dancing with the Stars, actually.
So he's visiting 6 teams right now after having undergone spinal fusion surgery. And 3 of them are in the NFC North. So it's the Bears, the Packers, and the Lions. And then also the Ravens are in there too. Or the Bears, sorry. It's the Bears, the Packers, and the Vikings, not the Lions. And then the Ravens are there too. He's also meeting with the Panthers and the Steelers. So goodness. A lot of teams apparently want to sign a guy coming off of a spinal fusion surgery, so he must have some talent. I'm going to say that for maximal regret / damage, it's the Packers. I think that is the one that is going to cause Vikings fans the most pain and therefore is the most likely thing to occur.
Next question is from Zen Cupid. We are going to go off the rails here, so just be prepared that the Vikings content has now ended, apparently, because we get to reference something that Arif tried to do for a while.
What do you mean tried? I successfully did it for a long period of time.
And did succeed for a bit. Zen Cupid asks, for a Reef subscription hack corner, I have recently unlocked an ongoing 20% off discount every week through HelloFresh. I believe I've done this by skipping every week with a comment of too expensive, and only unskipping once they send me at least a 20% discount. It seems they've picked up on this and now send me one only every 2 weeks, good for 20% off for the next 2 weeks. My question is, how far can I push this discount? And how should I go about slyly requesting larger discounts? Will I be able to eventually get free food indefinitely?
Okay, so you can't get free food, but Zen, this is small ball. I'm going to be honest. You're not thinking large enough, and I don't think it's because you can request larger discounts. I think you're probably in the discount range that you're at, unless you try to cancel your subscription. Then you'll probably get a 35% off for about 4 weeks. But here's the thing. You have to play the services against each other. So HelloFresh has one, Factor has one, Cook Unity has one. By the way, we don't do sponsorships on this show, but I will break that rule if you are Cook Unity. Please get back to me. I would love to be sponsored by Cook Unity. Factor, make better food. So anyway, the answer to that is if you are on all of these platforms, right, that give you ready to eat meals, whether it's a meal cooking service like HelloFresh, where you cook the meals, which I think that there's like Purple Plate or something. Like, there's a bunch of those, right? And they're consolidating, by the way. So if you had a bunch of different ones and you liked one, there's a decent chance it is owned now by HelloFresh. But anyway, I'm doing it with ready-to-eat meals because there's a bunch of people using the kitchen and it's just harder to cook than it used to be. But now I've got a rotation of 3 ready-to-eat meals. It's Factor, whatever HelloFresh uses because they bought it. No, they might have bought Factor, actually, and Cook Unity. And what I do is I receive a discount code in the mail. I use it. I get that for about 4 to 6 weeks. Then I rack up the other discount codes. It'll be in the mail or in email, right? Like, you don't have to worry about like polluting your mailbox. And then once I receive a new discount code, I cancel. I don't use the new discount code yet. I cancel the one I'm currently on. So, I tell Factor, like, hey, I'm canceling. It's too expensive. They're like, whoa, hey there, bucko. What if we gave you 30% off for the next 3 weeks? I'll be like, oh, yeah, I could do that. I'll do that. I'll cancel again. Sometimes they'll give me an offer. Sometimes they won't. And then I've already got the new discount code for the next 4 weeks already figured out. And I'm using that one. Then I cancel that. I use that one. Like, they want your business, and so they'll keep doing this to you. And you just gotta have the balls to say I'm canceling. Now, obviously, if you cancel and they don't offer you something to prevent you from canceling, you're canceled. That, well, not like in the sense that like you have a Netflix special now, but like you're done with the current thing. But if you're canceling your meal subscription because it is currently full price, you're not really in a bad spot because you'll always get the next meal discount or the next meal box either at a discount that's already been sent to you or at the same price as the other one anyway. So I don't think you're really losing anything. So I think you're thinking too small by skipping and getting a discount every so often. I think you have to have the stones to cancel. Tell them you're canceling because it's too expensive. See if they're going to offer you something. And if they don't, and it ends up being canceled anyway, there's other meal delivery services out there, I promise. And they will give you a discount to get your business. Also, by the way, I do have affiliate codes for Cook Unity. So DM me if you want to give me discounts and also you receive discounts.
That's actually the whole reason I was strong. My arm was twisted in order to put this question in.
I had nothing to do with what this question appeared in the middle of the notes, and I was like, I have thoughts, and I didn't tell you to put this in.
I didn't feel good about putting it in. I thought I was compromising my my integrity. The little I have.
The little I have. By the way, I get an email every time James withdraws money from the Norse Code Patreon. I'm always like a little bit concerned. I haven't said anything, but what little integrity I have is not a great way to sell that this is being done above board.
Well, it has nothing to do with the what's the word I'm looking for? It has nothing to do with a food subscription. It does have everything to do with tickets to the game this weekend. So.
Oh, okay, great. So my Cook Unity code is Arif Haas, ARIFHAS 414, and that should give you a $50 credit. So just go ahead.
I will not. You know what? Please harass us this weekend at the Vikings.
Yeah, we'll be to Ravens game.
Please ask him for coupons for cookies. It'll be great.
I don't have cookies.
This is going to be a great question for somebody who doesn't have any water left on his in his cup. Deez asks, for a Reef's Sumo Corner, with the November Basho starting this weekend, what are some storylines you're following? Also, can you please take a look at Koto Sakura and explain how it's physically possible that his anatomy allows him to have the nickname Quad Boobs in the community?
All right, so I wrote out a couple of storylines that I liked, and then literally the next question has one of the most interesting storylines from the November Basho. So I'll answer that one in the next question when we get to it, but I think the primary storyline I'm paying attention to is whether or not Hoshoryu can win, right? So since Hoshoryu got promoted to Yokozuna, he hasn't won a tournament. He's gotten one runner-up, or maybe two, but he's got one runner-up. And Onosato has won 3, which is crazy. Because he got promoted in January, right? So out of like the 5 tournaments this year, he's won 3 of them. I believe he's got double-digit wins in the other 2. That is an insane run to be on, and it's typically so. Once you're Yokozuna, when you win like 10 or so, a lot of people might consider it's called like a Dai Yokozuna or like a big Yokozuna, but like one of the Yokozuna so every Yokozuna is entered into kind of like legend, right? But some legends are more equal than others, as it were, and so for him to be on this path that a lot of people were suspicious of because like a ton of like the guys coming through the college ranks, like the best prospect in a generation. He's basically the Andrew Luck, right? As a prospect, right? And so a lot of people are suspicious because a lot of these really successful college Yokozuna college Rikishi don't go on to have these stellar careers and justify the hype that they've been. But he has, and he's been outstanding. And so to have 3 tournament wins already in his first year as Yokozuna, with 10 is kind of like this standard by which like some really legendary Yokozuna hit is incredible. Hoshoryu, on the other hand, I think he's had one runner-up, but like he's been plagued by injury ever since he's become a Yokozuna, and he's always compared to his uncle Asashoryu. And that guy was a legendary Yokozuna, and so he's kind of always in this guy's shadow, and he hasn't been able to kind of live up to that. And so this tournament, where I believe Onosato has defeated Hoshoryu twice in title matches, this tournament might kind of define the way these two are perceived for a long period of time. And so a win from Onosato, to have 4 out of 5 wins, it would just be mind-boggling in terms of capacity and capability. And Hoshoryu having another disappointing tournament would be, I wouldn't say it's grounds to kind of demote him from Yokozuna, but I think people will talk about it. And obviously that's like a very big deal. It's pretty rare, right? Like they tend to retire. But yeah, like we're in an interesting spot, and I think that the injuries that have plagued Hoshoryu are kind of unfairly putting him in a spot where people are, and the comparisons to his uncle, putting him in a spot where like underperformance from him is judged a little bit more harshly than elsewhere.
Well, the next sumo question is from Doyo Dust, who asks, the Rikishi you are most excited to going into the November Bashos, Personally, I have my eye on Matsushita. Ranks as
Makushita ranks, yeah.
Okay, apologies. I'm not as familiar with the terminology
Fair enough.
as you are, obviously. As these guys fighting for salaried status, but again, with no water and no practice, this is great. But Aoshinsky, nope, there's no S in that. There we go. To push for Ozeki.
Yeah, so this was actually the storyline I was writing up, and then this was like the next question. So Aoshiniki is just 21 years old, and being able to push for Ozeki at that age is incredible. So the average age for promotion to Ozeki is like much older. It's closer to like 28, 30. Some like 26 is like kind of young, right? But he might be able to do it at 21 years old. So he, especially as a foreigner. So since he got promoted into the top rank to compete at the top level of a tournament, he's gone 11-4 in each of those tournaments, which is 4 of them. He has one runner-up performance where he defeated Hoshoryu and won the technique prize. So he defeated a Yokozuna, which is a big deal, right? And once he's gotten into the upper ranks and he's gone 11-4, he's won an award at every tournament. So they only give out 3 awards plus the Emperor's Cup for winning the tournament. And a lot of times the Rikishi who wins the Emperor's Cup also wins 1, 2, or even all 3 of the awards. So he won 2 Fighting Spirit awards and 2 technique prizes. That's just outstanding. And so he's a Ukrainian. He's a Ukrainian potential Ozeki Rikishi who could hit salaried status at 21, which would make him like the 6th, 7th youngest to ever do it. Like the youngest is at 20 years old, but like there are 22-year-olds who are like the 9th youngest to ever do it, right? And remember, this goes back to like the 17th century, right? Like we have a long list of Rikishi who've been promoted to Ozeki that this guy is kind of hitting the boundary of in terms of his ability to compete with them. So when he was promoted into these upper level ranks, a lot of people were concerned that it was too fast, especially for a foreigner, right? So he's Ukrainian. But he has done nothing but been outstanding. Again, he was a runner-up in one of these tournaments, and he defeated Yokozuna, right? Like, he has been outstanding. And so there's been some discussion about whether or not it would be too soon. I think if he wins double-digit matches in this Basho, it's entirely possible that he could become one of the youngest Rikishi to ever be promoted. And I think that this would maybe cement his spot as a potential Ozeki. It'd be really, really cool. So that's the guy I'm watching. He's relatively undersized. He's a smaller Rikishi, and as you can tell from like the fact that he's won 2 technique prizes, he wins primarily by having outstanding technique, a great understanding of leverage. He was a freestyle wrestler in Ukraine before he became a Rikishi, and it's part of like this. There used to be a trend where foreign Rikishi were almost entirely like size and strength oriented, but he has been part of this like trend where like applying lessons from other backgrounds. So he often characterized as like this clunky, awkward looking wrestler, but honestly, it's just because he comes from a different movement base. He's very precise and technical. It would be so cool to see him get promoted this young. I would love it.
Next question. Let's go to this instead. From Matt, who asks, which JoJo's Bizarre Adventure protagonist is McCarthy most like at this point in his career?
So James told me there was like no research to do outside of the sumo questions, and whether or not I'm doing a bit about anime, I genuinely just have not watched any JoJo. So like I can't answer this.
I thought this would be something you could just handle immediately off the top of your head.
I don't know why you think that, because I don't watch anime. I would need to do research either way, James. But if I did watch anime, this would just not be part of that diet. So I don't. There's I saw a clip on Twitter where a bunch of pasta got turned into like a spiritual attack, but actually it hurt a lot, but actually was healing everybody. That one, is that a protagonist? Is that a villain? Is that just like another character? I don't know, man. This one's not for me.
Well, I'm not mad, but I am more disappointed than normal in you.
I'll take that into consideration.
Anya Taylor Joy asks for Arif's winning therapy corner.
Okay.
This is a reference to the
caused
end of, yes, you did. And I encouraged it. I started meeting with a therapist in the fall of 2018 to help with some some anxiety issues, apologies, ahead of the birth of my daughter. During the first session, we also discussed feelings over the passing of my dog. This brought my doctor to tears as she had apparently had to put her dog down the day before.
Oh my God.
Did I win therapy?
Oh my God. Holy crap. Okay, so my understanding of therapists is that they have, I'm not going to say have seen it all, but they've seen a lot from their clients and they've heard a lot of stuff. And so to get them to react very intensely, whether that is by laughing or by crying or what, that is a win, I think. So you have like with 7 years of experience with this person, right? So have they reacted strongly to other things? Because like I want to know if you have a weak therapy schedule, I guess is what I want to say. Like, are your wins coming cheaply, or do you have like a stoic therapist that's like it's like a strong, like a 2015 Broncos defense kind of therapist, right? Where it's pretty difficult to score points. I have to know that, like, you did win, but like at what level did you win? Are we talking like, is this like an FCS win? Are you defeating Incarnate Word, or are we talking like Bama?
This is important questions here.
Yeah.
But also from Anya Taylor Joy, for Arif's paternity corner, my kids are old enough now to watch and actually enjoy the football games. However, when Vikings players get tackled before scoring a touchdown, they are upset, regardless of whether or not it was a successful play. Is Kevin O'Connell actually the father of my children?
It depends. We got to ask Mark McGrath, right?
Actually, yes. That is. It turns out Mark McGrath is great at breaking bad news to anyone. So if you have bad news, I think you should pay $90 to Mark McGrath on Cameo in order to get that bad news to be told. Yes. That's rough. Look, they just want this. They just want the touchdown. They just want the excitement. They just want the fireworks. Unless they're long-suffering Lions fans who watched Calvin Johnson get tackled at the 1 for 10 years in a row,
or get tackled in the end zone and then the ball pops out, and for some reason that's not counted as a catch.
Yeah, that they just want the fireworks and the good stuff. My 5-year-old plans to replace me asks, question for Arif's therapy corner.
Oh, good.
In the last year, I've had 2 new therapists due to one moving out of state and another switching jobs and being unable to take me as a patient at the new job. Am I losing at therapy? How can I start winning with my new therapist?
So Jair Alexander has had several opportunities to play Justin Jefferson and has ducked many of them. Just recently, he got traded away from the Ravens, who were about to play Justin Jefferson, to a team that had already played Justin Jefferson in the Eagles. Now, most people would argue that Jefferson has won these matchups, despite the matchups not occurring, because Jair Alexander keeps fleeing the state. So I think your therapists are ducking you, and that is a sign that you are too good and are winning, actually. So you're not losing at therapy, you're winning at therapy, so long as you have found new therapists to replace these old ones that keep ducking you because you're too good at therapy. So that is important to understand. You're asking how you can start winning with your new therapist. It sounds like you're already winning, and you need to explore how you've been doing that. Feel free to ask them how that's happening.
I think this is much like being the big fish in the small pond. This is like the NDSU situation. Like, just go up to the next division.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
Yeah, you just ask and next time ask your therapist for their therapist information.
Right. Make sure that your stadium can seat enough people, and then
accept the invite
right
to the new conference and go for it. Room Temperature asks, for a Reese Ornithology Corner, there's a lot of crows in the Costco parking lot that I work at. I assume you work inside the Costco, but what's the way that's written? What's the best way to earn their trust so that they will steal stuff for me?
All right. So, legal advice off topic on Reddit. Someone asked, is it illegal to inadvertently train crows to bring you money? This is relevant, right? Because you are asking if you can get crows to steal stuff for you, but advertently, is that a word? There's like a name for when we create an opposite or a negation word, and we don't have the word it negates in our lexicon. Anyway, you're doing it advertently, it sounds like. So on Facebook, this is the story that was shared. It's a screenshot of 4chan on Facebook. That's just what social media is now. I've become a breadcrumb dealer to 4 crows in my local lake, and they pay me with a bit of everything, shiny stuff, fabric, pens, etc. But they recently paid me with $20 they found somewhere. So I decided to buy them some more expensive bread. They loved it, so they understand what to do. Give me dollar notes. And I've probably racked up $200 at this point. Is it morally wrong, though? I mean, they're the ones who steal it from someone, or perhaps they just got a big pile laying somewhere. Should I keep on doing this? So that's the story. The Reddit poster who only posted the link to the story was like, it got me wondering if there's any legal precedent for this, assuming that the text in the OP is factual, not misrepresenting anything. So my guess is what has been happening is the crows. So you provide a crow with both food and a shiny object, and you kind of associate the shiny object with the food. And whenever a crow gets closer to you, or specifically brings you stuff, you prioritize that crow in giving them the food. It sounds like that's how that would happen. But I am curious about answering this question. If you neither know where the money came from nor target places, and literally all you do is show up with bread and take whatever money happens to be there when you do, are there criminal implications? So New York state law says that you need to take reasonable steps to ascertain the true owner of the cash. So if you find a $100 bill lying on the floor in a local post office and there was no one else in the post office except for the postman behind the counter, you would need to notify the postman that you'd found an amount of money on the floor. And if anyone came back asking about it, they should call him and you would leave your business card so they can do that. Then you go down to the local police department and report the fine, surrender the $100 bill to them, and you'll receive a receipt, right? So you need to go through what might be considered a reasonable step to determine where that came from. Now, the items that the crows are stealing might not be items that you would typically declare as having been found or stolen. So that's kind of the others. Like, I don't know what stuff they're stealing. Are they stealing like gum wrappers, or are they stealing, like, you work at a Costco, right? 72-inch TVs. Like, which is it? Because I think one of those you're probably going to have to report. The other one, not so much. So that's the important part. As for like how it is, like I just think you gotta have crows. You gotta start feeding crows, then prefer crows that are interacting with you more. Potentially crows that are giving you stuff. You can even model the behavior and have like a puppet crow give you stuff. Like have a cohort put on a puppet crow glove, and it gives you stuff and you feed it, right? And that'll model the behavior. But yeah, you got to be careful about this. Make sure that they're not like stealing like a cart of like 72 fun-sized bags of chips or whatever Costco sells.
Andy asks, question for a Reef's Revolution Organization Corner.
Okay.
We do not spend enough time here. Considering that the NFL clearly screwed JJ on the screen pass to Aaron Jones, that was obviously a forward pass.
Obviously.
What is the best path to retribution against the powers that be? Should he launch a revolution to unseat Roger Goodell and replace him with a properly suited, unbiased, Sumer brain-powered bot? Speaking of which, they had a great great bit of information that we didn't know about the Ravens.
Yeah. So I asked, I was like, hey, I need to do a Ravens preview. Can you give me all the information I need to do a Ravens preview? And they brought up some stuff. And so I asked a follow-up question. I was like, well, is it important that like, that McCarthy is an inexperienced quarterback? How have the Ravens done this season against experienced quarterbacks versus young quarterbacks? Which, those aren't exactly the opposites, but you'd expect, a natural language AI to be able to kind of figure out what I really mean by that, right? And so they said against experienced quarterbacks, they've allowed a 67% completion rate, 7.4 yards per attempt, 153 passing touchdowns. I'll get back to that. 58 interceptions. I'll get back to that. Plus 0.198 average EPA per play. But against young quarterbacks, which is under 3 years, 66% completion rate, slightly lower, 7.1 yards per attempt, slightly lower, 65 passing touchdowns, way lower, 28 interceptions forced, way lower, plus 165 average EPA per play. So they've performed better against younger quarterbacks, allowing fewer yards per attempt and generating lower EPA per play. And the sample it gave me was 36 different quarterbacks faced this year with more than 3 years of experience, and 19 different quarterbacks faced this year with under 3 years of experience. So they have played 55 quarterbacks this year who have combined for 218 passing touchdowns and 86 interceptions. That's what that's 50 plus games they've played this season. They must be tired. So I think the Vikings have a real good opportunity here.
Yep. Explains a lot of problems that have come up, and probably why Lamar was out for so long.
Right. Yeah. So should JJ launch a revolution to unseat Roger Goodell? No. 9 should. JJ is at home with his kid and wife. 9 is the one launching the revolution. 9 gets stuff done.
Boy,
am I wrong?
Yeah, well, the whole thing's wrong. By the way, last episode, I had asked the listeners, where did the corner thing, where did it start? Nolan Kaler is 85 to 90% confident he's the one who invented the corner.
That makes sense. I can believe that.
I'm willing to put the blame on him.
Right, because I think he started with just for North code, right? Like
he said, I'm 85 to 90% confident I'm the one who invented the corner. I deleted X, so I can't confirm, but I'm fairly certain that I asked a question about food I could make for a gluten/dairy sensitive roommate. I had to prove that I was modestly capable. Okay. So that I do remember a question along those lines from the long, long time ago. So it's possible. Let's wrap up with Kyle Segal, who asks, while we've established underground bases throughout the state, it has proven difficult to operate against a government that actively hates a sizable portion of its own citizens. How does one balance the fight against fascism with the basic need to survive, hypothetically? Boy, things have taken a turn for Kyle in Florida. I'm starting to think that we're reaching the end of what we could feasibly offer him for advice at this point.
Right, for his role-playing game?
Florida man is going to Florida.
So in this hypothetical situation where a fascist government is actively hating a sizable portion of its own citizens, you would need to find a way to balance the fight against fascism with the basic need to survive. So obviously you need to be very serious in the way that you approach creating a livable world for people. But it is really important that you understand that you are fighting for the ability to be human, right? And so you need to be able to make room for moments of levity. So let's say hypothetically, you went to a protest a couple months ago, and hypothetically, there were a bunch of people online who had a bunch of discourse about the protest, and they got mad that people were dressed up in Captain America costumes and Marvel costumes, and they're like, "Hey, if you're protesting and it's serious, you can't make light of it." I got to tell you that if you're the one saying that you have never been to or organized a protest before and have no understanding that the capacity for joy is a critical element to making sure that you're fighting for a better world. And you got to have moments where you're having fun. Now, you talked about the basic need to survive, which is not really what that was getting at, but it is important that you create room for the people who are doing the fighting, that they have that capability. Now, in order to fight against fascism in your hypothetical role-playing scenario, you need to make sure that you establish multiple lines of logistics to make sure that people have access to food. You need to have a good understanding of ways that you can preserve food, whether that's through drying it. Surely you can liberate a couple of food dehydrators, whether it's through drying it or using kind of older school methods like salt curing or confit. But have multiple ways to access food for a bunch of different people. And like you said, you've got underground bases, right? So you've got presumably a tunnel system, and that tunnel system should have the ability to access some of these other underground bases so you can move throughout. The ability to collapse those tunnels obviously is very important, because if one underground base is compromised, you need to be able to cut off access to it. But I think that's how you do that, right? Like, you need to make sure that you survive before you can fight. That is a fundamental rule. So you need to make sure that you have access to medicine and food before you figure out guerrilla tactics. And these things can be concomitant, right? Like, you can use guerrilla tactics not just to disrupt high value targets. Again, in this hypothetical world, we're talking like Terminator in the future type stuff, obviously. But also guerrilla tactics to find stores of food, find medicine, and liberate that for, again, this novel that you seem to be writing.
Yes, a novel.
Right.
That is going to be it for this episode.
Maybe.
Maybe. That's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. We hope you have enjoyed it. We will be back on Sunday for a special edition of the show. Arif, what do you have to plug?
So over at Wide Left, we're going to have a mock draft coming up, a post-trade mock draft from James Foster, who writes these really long, detailed pieces. It's not a typical mock draft where it's like, I think the Saints are going first, I'm going to give them this one guy, and this one guy has good stats. It's very much like an in-depth look at all of the players that could potentially be in the draft. And so you're going to end up like learning a lot about not just the individual college players that could be drafted in the first round, but also about what their strength and weakness profiles are, a really good understanding of like what advanced film charting and statistics can get you, and a good understanding of what translates and what doesn't at the next level. Really good piece. That's coming up soon over at Wide Left. I also mentioned Matt Fries' piece on how the Vikings use the cross dog blitz to beat the Lions and Jared Goff. I think it's a really wonderful piece. Take a look at that. And then also, like, my post-game piece did really well. I have that discussion I mentioned about how JJ McCarthy performed and why I think it is important to be critical, despite the fact that, of course, he's a young quarterback and he has the room to grow. So that's all over at Wide Left Football. And also, 60-Minute Drill has not just our weekly recap episodes where we recap the NFL, but we did release an episode, I believe, for our Patreon listeners, about the 6 times Trump tried to buy an NFL football team and the one time he tried to emerge with an NFL football team. Great episode.
Well, that's me it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be back on Sunday. So for Reef, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening. And please remember that you never want to go double Ngakoue. And we'll be back next week. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog, at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of... and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or at my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merch. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
Hey, all things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.